Welcome to the deep dive. Ever wondered about the hidden machinery that keeps us and, well, the entire living world running?
It's pretty incredible when you stop to think about it.
Totally. Today, we're plunging into the fundamental processes that power all life. From the simplest single-celled organisms right up to complex beings like us and the plants around us.
And our sources for this are mainly educational materials focusing on CBSE Class 10 science, specifically Chapter 6 on life processes.
Right. Plus some extra bits on autotrophs and heterotrophs. Our mission today, to really distill the essentials of nutrition, respiration, transportation, and excretion.
How they happen in both plants and animals.
Exactly. Hopefully giving you a, surprisingly clear understanding of these absolutely vital activities.
And what's really remarkable is that these life processes, they're like the core operating system for all biology.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, think about it. Every living thing relies on these basics: growth, movement, respiration, transportation, excretion, reproduction, and nutrition.
All working together.
In this incredibly coordinated way just to sustain life.
Okay, let's dive right into how living things get their fuel nutrition. And straight away, you see these two fundamentally different strategies.
Yeah, the big split.
First up, autotrophic nutrition. Imagine being like a self-sustaining energy factory.
Completely independent food-wise.
That's what organisms like green plants do. They create their own food from simple inorganic materials. And the star player here is photosynthesis.
Ah, photosynthesis. A truly transformative process.
It really is. Taking carbon dioxide and water, using sunlight and chlorophyll, and turning them into carbohydrates and oxygen.
And it's that process, isn't it, that started filling Earth's atmosphere with oxygen billions of years ago.
Paving the way for, well, us and lots of other life.
Precisely. Autotrophs, the name means self-nourishment, basically. They're the ultimate self-feeders.
So how does photosynthesis actually, work?
It's this breathtakingly elegant biochemical pathway. Chlorophyll, the green pigment, it grabs the energy from sunlight.
Captures it.
Right.
Yeah.
Then this light energy gets converted into chemical energy, sort of like charging a biological battery.
Oh, yeah.
Then water molecules are split. This releases oxygen, which is obviously crucial for us.
The byproduct we need.
Exactly. And at the same time, carbon dioxide is reduced to form energy-rich carbohydrates, sugars.
Which the plant uses as fuel.
Right, for growth and all its other activities.
And these self-sufficient chefs need specific ingredients, right?
They do, like any recipe.
Sunlight, obviously. Chlorophyll, which you mentioned, housed in these little cellular powerhouses called chloroplasts.
Yep. Think of them as miniature solar-powered kitchens.
Cool. They also need carbon dioxide.
Which they pull in through tiny pores on their leaves, the stomata.
Right, stomata. And just plain old water.
Absorbed by the roots, like tiny straws drawing it up from the soil.
The stomata sound interesting, just pores.
Well, they're more than just pores. They facilitate CO2 intake and oxygen release, yes, but they're also key for transpiration.
Transpiration. That's water loss.
Yeah, essentially the plant losing water vapor. And the opening and closing of these stomata, it's a very delicate balancing act.
Why is that?
It has to be regulated to maximize gas exchange for photosynthesis while minimizing water loss. Super important, especially in dry places.
Makes sense. Okay, flipping the coin now. Heterotrophic nutrition.
Right, the consumers.
If autotrophs are the chefs, heterotrophs are, well, everyone else who needs to eat, relying on others for their meals.
And there's such a huge diversity in how they do it.
Yeah, like what?
Well, you have holozoic organisms, that's us, and amoebas too, that ingest solid food, swallow it, and digest it internally.
Okay, standard eating.
Then there are the saprophytes, like fungi, nature's recyclers. They feed on dead and decaying stuff.
Breaking it down.
Exactly. And finally, you've got parasites. Things like the cuscuta plant, which taps into other plants, or ticks feeding on animal blood.
Often harming the host?
Often, yes, deriving nutrition from a host.
Let's look at the simple case first. Like an amoeba. How does that work?
It's remarkably direct for a single cell. It basically engulfs food particles. It extends these temporary false feet pseudopodia.
Right.
Wraps around the food, forming a little bubble inside called a food vacuole.
And digestion happens in there.
Yes, digestion, absorption, all inside that vacuole. Then it just ejects the waste. The whole cell surface can be involved in uptake.
Wow. Simple but effective. Now humans. Much more complicated, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. It's a highly orchestrated event. We have this whole digestive superhighway, the alimentary canal.
I'm staying this right.
All the way. And each section is specialized for a particular job.
Okay, so it starts in the mouth,
Mm.
We ingest food, teeth grind it up,
Mechanical breakdown.
tongue helps with tasting, swallowing,
Yeah.
and saliva gets involved.
Right. Salivary glands secrete saliva. It moistens the food, sure, but it also contains an enzyme, salivary amylase.
Amylase, that breaks down starch.
Exactly. Starts breaking down starches into simpler sugars right there in the mouth. That initial step is quite important.
Sets the stage. Then it goes down the esophagus.
Yep. Via peristalsis. Think of it like squeezing toothpaste down a tube, muscular waves pushing the food along.
Okay. And into the stomach, which is like a chemical vat?
Huh, sort of. Its walls have gastric glands secreting gastric juice. That's a mix of hydrochloric acid, HCl, an enzyme called pepsin, and mucus.
HCl sounds intense.
It is. Creates a highly acidic environment. Perfect for pepsin to start breaking down proteins.
And it kills bacteria too.
Bonus effect, yes. Kills many harmful microbes. And the mucus is crucial.
To protect the stomach itself.
Exactly. Forms a barrier so the stomach doesn't digest itself with that strong acid and protein digesting enzyme.
Smart design. Okay, from the stomach, where next?
Into the small intestine. This is really the main event for digestion and absorption.
Where everything gets broken down fully.
Pretty much. Carbohydrates, proteins, fats, they all get completely digested here, but it needs help.
Help from where?
From the liver, which produces bile. Bile emulsifies fats.
Emulsifies, like breaking up grease.
Exactly like that. Turns big fat globules into tiny droplets so enzymes can work on them more easily.
Okay. And the pancreas.
The pancreas adds pancreatic juice, packed with enzymes like trypsin for proteins and lipase for those fats.
So liver and pancreas send stuff into the small intestine,
Correct. And the small intestine's own walls secrete enzymes too to finish the job.
breaking everything down to the basic building blocks.
Right. Carbohydrates to glucose, fats to fatty acids and glycerol, proteins to amino acids, simple molecules that can be absorbed.
And absorption is also key here.
Absolutely. The inner lining has millions of these tiny finger-like projections called villi.
Villi. I remember those. They increase surface area, right?
Massively. Imagine trying to absorb nutrients through a smooth pipe versus one lined with a dense carpet.
Huge difference.
It gives it an enormous surface area, some say like a tennis court, making nutrient absorption into the bloodstream incredibly efficient.
Wow. That's impressive engineering.
It really is a testament to efficiency. Then, whatever's left, the indigestible stuff.
Moves to the large intestine.
Right. Its main job is absorbing excess water back into the body.
And then the waste is eliminated.
Through the anus, yes.
Okay, so that's nutrition sorted. We've got the fuel broken down. Now, how do we actually get the energy out of it?
That brings us to respiration. The process of breaking down that food, those glucose molecules, to release the stored chemical energy.
And that involves breathing, right? Taking in oxygen.
It involves two key parts. There's the gaseous exchange, breathing in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide, and then there's cellular respiration.
Happening inside our cells.
Exactly. The first step, breaking down glucose, that 6-carbon sugar, happens in the cytoplasm, the cell's main fluid. It breaks into two smaller molecules called pyruvate.
Pyruvate. 3 carbons each.
That's right. And what happens next to pyruvate is fascinating because it totally depends on whether oxygen is around.
Okay, so pathway 1, no oxygen, anaerobic respiration.
Right. In yeast, for example, this is fermentation. Pyruvate gets converted into ethanol alcohol plus carbon dioxide and a bit of energy.
The process for making beer and wine.
And bread rising, yeah. Interestingly, this might have been how early life got energy before Earth had much oxygen.
And in our muscles. We do anaerobic too.
We can, temporarily. During really intense exercise, if oxygen supply can't keep up, our muscle cells convert pyruvate into lactic acid.
The burn. And cramps.
That's the stuff. It builds up. Importantly, anaerobic respiration gives much less energy than the alternative.
Which is aerobic respiration with oxygen.
Correct. When oxygen is present, the pyruvate molecules move into the mitochondria.
The powerhouses of the cell.
The very same. Inside the mitochondria, pyruvate gets completely broken down.
Into what?
Into carbon dioxide and water. And crucially, it releases a lot more energy this way.
And this released energy, it doesn't just float away?
No, it's captured. Stored in a molecule called ATP adenosine triphosphate.
ATP. The energy currency.
Precisely. It's like the cell's rechargeable battery, or as you said, its universal currency. It fuels almost everything the cell does. Muscle contraction, nerve signals, building new molecules.
Powered by ATP.
Got it. Now, back to the breathing part, getting the oxygen in. You mentioned differences between water and land animals.
Yeah, aquatic organisms like fish generally have to breathe much faster.
Why is that?
Because there's way less dissolved oxygen in water compared to air? So they need to pass more water over their gills to get enough oxygen.
You work harder for it. Makes sense. And the human system.
Our respiratory system is quite the piece of engineering. Air comes in the nostrils.
Filtered, warmed, moistened in the nasal passage.
Right, then down through the pharynx, past the larynx, the voice box, into the trachea, the windpipe.
Which has cartilage rings to keep it open.
Yep, prevents it from collapsing. Then the trachea splits into 2 bronchi, one for each lung.
And these branch out smaller and smaller.
They're bronchioles, yeah.
Wow.
Eventually leading to millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli.
Alveoli, that's where the action happens.
That's the crucial interface. They're surrounded by dense networks of tiny blood vessels, capillaries. Gas exchange happens right there.
How does that work? The alveoli walls are incredibly thin, just 1 cell thick, and there are so many, the total surface area is huge. Oxygen from the air you breathe diffuses easily across that thin wall into the blood.
And hitches a ride on hemoglobin.
Exactly. Binds to hemoglobin in red blood cells to be carried around the body. At the same time, carbon dioxide, the waste gas from the cells, moves from the blood into the alveoli to be breathed out.
And need exchange.
Mm.
And the mechanics of breathing itself,
Yeah.
in and out.
That involves the chest cavity changing size. When you inhale, your rib cage moves up and out, and the diaphragm muscle below your lungs contracts and flattens.
Making more space.
Right. Increases the volume inside your chest, which lowers the pressure, and air rushes into the lungs.
And exhaling is the reverse.
Pretty much. Ribs move down and in, diaphragm relaxes and domes upwards, decreasing the chest volume, increasing pressure, and forcing air out.
Quite rhythmic. Now, how do plants compare? You said simpler?
Much simpler, yeah. No lungs, no specialized organs like ours. Gas exchange mostly happens through those stomata in the leaves.
The same pores they use for CO2.
Yep. Oxygen out, CO2 in for photosynthesis, but also CO2 out from their own respiration. They also exchange gases through lenticels, little pores on stems, and even just across the surface of the roots by diffusion.
Okay, so we've got nutrients, we've extracted energy, now we need to move stuff around. Transportation.
Essential, especially in larger organisms. Simple diffusion just won't cut it over long distances.
Like trying to send a message across a city by shouting.
Exactly. You need a delivery system. In humans, that's the circulatory system.
Heart, blood vessels, blood.
And lymph. Those are the key components. The heart is the pump.
4 chambers, right?
Yep, right. Atrium and ventricle handle the deoxygenated blood coming back from the body, sending it to the lungs. Left atrium and ventricle handle the oxygenated blood coming from the lungs, sending it out to the body.
That's the double circulation.
That's it. 2 loops. One pulmonary to the lungs and back, one systemic to the body and back. Very efficient. Keeps oxygenated and deoxygenated blood separate.
Good for warm-blooded animals like us.
Helps meet our high energy demands. And blood itself is amazing stuff.
A connective tissue.
Technically, yes. It's got the liquid plasma matrix carrying blood cells, red blood cells for oxygen transport, thanks to hemoglobin,
White blood cells for immunity.
fighting infections, and platelets for clotting. If you get a cut, they help stop the bleeding.
And blood carries more than just oxygen, right?
Oh, yeah. Carbon dioxide waste, digested food molecules, hormones, nitrogenous wastes heading for excretion. It's a real transport hub.
And the vessels.
Yeah.
Arteries, veins, capillaries.
Arteries generally carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. Thick, muscular walls to handle the pressure.
Except the pulmonary artery.
Good point. That carries deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Veins carry deoxygenated blood towards the heart, usually under lower pressure.
Except the pulmonary vein.
Right, again, bringing oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. And then capillaries are the tiny ones.
Where the exchange happens.
Exactly. Microscopic vessels forming networks in all the tissues. Walls are super thin, allowing easy exchange of gases, nutrients, wastes between blood and cells.
And you mentioned lymph. What's that?
Lymph is a yellowish fluid. Some plasma leaks out of the capillaries into the spaces between cells. That fluid becomes lymph.
What does it do?
Several things. It carries some substances, transports digested fats from the intestine, contains white blood cells for defense, and importantly, it collects this excess fluid and returns it to the bloodstream, prevents swelling.
Okay, so that's us sorted. What about plants? How do they transport stuff?
They have their own system, quite different. 2 main types of vascular tissue, xylem and phloem.
Xylem and phloem. I remember those names. Xylem is for water.
Primarily, yes. Xylem transports water and dissolved minerals upwards from the roots to the rest of the plant leaves, stems, flowers.
Upwards only. How?
Mostly upwards. The main driving force is transpiration pull. Remember transpiration, water evaporating from leaves.
Yeah, through the stomata.
That evaporation creates a tension, like a suction, that pulls the column of water up through the xylem vessels and tracheids. These are like continuous hollow pipes made of dead cells.
Dead cells. Interesting. So xylem is the water pipe. What about phloem?
Phloem transports the sugars made during photosynthesis, the food from the leaves, where they're made.
To where they're needed.
Exactly. To storage organs like roots or fruits, or to growing parts like buds and tips. This movement is called translocation.
And is that also only upwards?
No, phloem transport can be bidirectional up or down the plant wherever the sugars are needed. And unlike water movement in xylem, translocation in phloem requires energy. It's an active process involving living cells like sieve tubes and companion cells.
So xylem, mostly passive upward water transport. Phloem, active bidirectional sugar transport.
That's a good summary.
Okay, final piece of the puzzle. Excretion, getting rid of waste.
Absolutely vital. It's about removing metabolic wastes, the byproducts of all those chemical reactions to maintain internal balance or homeostasis. If waste builds up, it can be toxic.
How do simple organisms manage? Like amoeba again?
Simple diffusion. Waste products just diffuse out across the cell membrane into the water. Easy peasy.
But not for us complex folks.
Nope. We produce various wastes. The main ones are nitrogenous wastes, like urea and uric acid from breaking down proteins. Also excess water, salts, and even gases like CO2.
CO2 we breathe out, mainly.
Right, handled by the respiratory system, but still technically excretion. But the primary excretory system is the urinary system.
Kidneys, ureters, bladder, urethra.
That's the lineup. Kidneys are the filters. Amazing organs.
What's inside them?
Millions of tiny filtering units called nephrons. Each nephron is intricate.
How do they filter blood?
Each nephron starts with a glomerulus, a tight knot of capillaries where blood plasma is forced out under pressure into a surrounding cup-like structure, the Bowman's capsule.
Like a sieve.
Sort of. This initial fluid, the filtrate, contains water, salts, glucose, amino acids, urea, lots of stuff, good and bad.
So it needs refining.
Definitely. The filtrate then flows through a long, winding tubule. And here's the clever part. Selective reabsorption.
Pulling back the good stuff.
Exactly. Useful things the body needs most of the water, glucose, amino acids. Some salts are actively transported back out of the tubule and into the blood.
Leaving the waste behind.
Precisely. What's left behind in the tubule is urine, mostly water, urea, uric acid, excess salts. This then collects and flows down the ureters to the bladder for storage.
It's amazing how much filtering happens. You mentioned 180 liters a day.
Roughly, yes. About 180 liters of filtrate are formed daily, but we only excrete maybe 1 to 2 liters as urine. That shows how effective the reabsorption is.
And it's regulated based on how hydrated we are.
Absolutely. The amount of water reabsorbed is adjusted based on the body's needs and hormone signals, helping control water balance.
And if kidneys fail,
then you need artificial help. Hemodialysis using an artificial kidney machine to filter the blood outside the body.
life-saving technology. Now plants again. Simpler excretion too.
Much simpler. No kidneys. Gaseous wastes, like oxygen from photosynthesis or CO2 from respiration, go out through the stomata,
Excess water.
out via transpiration, mostly from leaves.
What about solid or liquid waste?
They can store some waste in leaves that eventually fall off, or in bark that peels away, or even in fruits that drop.
Clever. Getting rid of the whole storage container.
Kind of. They also secrete things like gums and resins, often into old xylem tissue. And some waste can even be excreted directly into the soil around the roots.
So wrapping this deep dive up, it's pretty clear these processes, nutrition, respiration, transportation, excretion, are fundamental.
Absolutely. The cornerstones of survival for every living thing. They're all interconnected, constantly working.
Whether it's a plant quietly photosynthesizing or an animal hunting its next meal.
These processes ensure life continues in all its amazing forms.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listener. Consider how these basic processes, operating often unseen at the cellular level, manage to orchestrate the incredible complexity and sheer diversity of life we see on Earth.
And maybe ponder this. What's the most surprising or extreme adaptation you can think of in nature that really highlights one of these core life processes, nutrition, respiration, transport, or excretion, being pushed to its limits or used in a really unexpected way? Something to think about.